Hello Struckpup, today I'm bringing you a video for the Slayer class. The build I've decided to call Cleaver's Wast Song of Rage. It is a build that's using the Wast Song set, which is also known as the Avenger set. We're also using the Heroic Cleaver from the set as one of our damage dealing skills, and we've combined it with Strike of the Anvil and Call to Oath. I've also included Wasp Bastion for extra health and energy regeneration and for that rage generation. The last active skill I've decided to include is Avenging Charge. It's optional and you can replace it for something else, but it's very good for situations where you need to bail out quickly, heal up and come back into the combat. The Heroic Cleave does quite some damage, and when you combine it with Strike of the Anvil and Call to Oath, you can see some very nice numbers stacking up, and together with the passive I've decided to place in the build, you can see some good stacking of damage, especially when there's a lot of bleeding targets. You keep also stunning them when you have the Ring of Resonance, which causes them to bleed, which in turn makes them to take more damage and increases your damage based on the number of bleeding enemies. So a lot of synergies are added in this build. It may not have as high damage output as the Undefeated set build, and maybe it's around the same damage output as the Grimnir set. However, it's not as good for groups of enemies such as the Grimnir set's Fire Aura. With the Grimnir set Fire Aura, many of the enemies that were around us kept dying just from the Fire Aura, the little guys. So maybe it was a bit harder to stack up many bleeding enemies for that build, for fights that are longer. With this build we can at least do a few hits before the little guys die, so we can kind of deal some nice damage to the big guys before this happens. It still does some good crits like 22 million, 23, 4, 5 million every now and then. The most I've seen it do on Chaos 5 is around 30 something million, but this was while I was streaming, it wasn't during the recording for this video. I've also prepared a few different versions of the skill arrangements and the god skill point allocations. The main skill points allocation includes Elixir of Power and Duelist Chain Reaction, which you get from the invasion. But I've included some alternatives for before you can get those, so that you kinda have some basis to go on with, depending on how you want to play. The gear of choice for this build would be the Avenger set, also known as the Wast Song set. It is a Cleaver focused set. It gives us Heroic Cleaver. It also is focused around making the enemies that are bleeding take another 300% damage and slowing them. Something worth mentioning about the build is we really need high crit chance, high cooldown reduction, and as high as we can get flat damage. Those are the main stats, so you can get cooldown reduction from the helmet, the accessories and the 2 axes. Something worth mentioning about the axes is that they give you twice as much cooldown reduction than an amulet or ring could give you. So even if you have to lose some crit chance from an axe to get that cooldown reduction, it might be worth it. You can try and regain it either from a Collector's Guild 5% passive crit chance or from the accessories. You can see that I've decided not to use this particular Heartseeker that gives me crit chance compared to the one that gives me cooldown reduction, because even though I'm getting better paper DPS, in the end it will be overall leaving me hanging when using my skills. So I decided to sacrifice that crit damage, go for the cooldown, and then maybe rely on crit chance from other sources. If you need more cooldown reduction, maybe you can try losing the damage from last fight and using an impatient one, but this depends on you killing extra enemies all the time, so maybe not a good choice. If you want to go for a easier content and just be killing elites, if you have a good road but thirsty one and impatient one, maybe you can go for it. So if you can't get those two specific axes and maybe have a good Victor's Tribute, it's a good choice, good replacement, so it's not so bad, although this is more useful for when using a challenge set or undefeated set. Something worth mentioning about the gauntlets is that they're the only piece of equipment that can give you flat damage and crit damage from the armors. So try to get flat damage, don't bother about the crit damage that much. If you have something with flat damage and HP, keep it. If you have something with flat damage and crit damage, keep it, but make sure there is flat damage. 3000 flat damage would be better than 40 crit damage overall for the build, so keep that in mind. Priority should be crit, not crit damage, but flat damage here. Here priority should be cooldown reduction, but try to get something with cooldown reduction and HP. As for those three pieces, priority is HP. Anything else is just a bonus stat for you, be it energy, speed, cost reduction, etc. For the rings and amulet, as I said, cooldown reduction and crit chance, with a bit more priority maybe on the crit chance for those, but still try to get at least two of them with cooldown reduction. And for the choices in regards to amulet, Mountain Pendant is one of the best choices, and it goes very well with the build. But if you can't get a Mountain Pendant, then get a Fiery Ring of Tori at least in one of the ring slots. You do need at least one of those two items in the build to get that extra cooldown reduction that we need. If you get both of them, even better, as long as they have crit chance and maybe some cooldown reduction. Any other stats like HP, flat damage or crit damage would be a bonus, so don't beat yourself up if you can't get those. As you can see, I'm missing here some cooldown reduction. It took me a while. I went through 5 different old resonance rings to get one with crit chance, and even then this doesn't give me cooldown reduction, but at least it gives good flat damage and crit damage. So I decided to sacrifice a bit of cooldown reduction here. Now, Insulation Ring is not a bad choice, but if you can't get one, use Siege Breaker. And before you get Ring of Resonance, use either Siege Breaker, Insulation, Siege Breaker, Fire Ring of Tori, or Insulation and Fire Ring of Tori. Avoid using Gromryu Ring. I would strongly suggest against using that unless it really draws with good rolls, then use it. Now, where to get the invasion rings such as Ring of Resonance? You get it from here, but before you can get it, you would actually need to get those 4 nodes for corruption resistance, 60 corruption resistance. That may not be enough, so you may need to get all those other nodes that give you some extra damage reduction and HP reduction of the enemies and bonuses for you. This build also uses Elixir of Power and Duelist Chain Reaction. So you might wanna unlock those, then move on to this here, and eventually unlock Duelist Chain Reaction and Elixir of Power. Another thing that might be nice is Elixir of Swiftness, but I prefer the Elixir of Power for extra damage. Before you get those, as I said, use whatever rings you get with good rolls. Now let's move on to showing you a bit of the skill point evocation and how I've decided to spend my god skills. The skills I've decided to pick go like this. Cleaver, Heroic, Avenging Charge. This can be replaced if you think you don't need that extra escape mechanic. Call to Old Superior, Strike of the Anvil Mastered, Ancestor's Gift first version, and Vast Bastion Mastered. For the passives, I've decided to go for the Superior Eternal Grudge, Trail of Blood Mastered, Dead Wall Mastered, and Deep Gaseous Superior. From the invasion, as I've showed you in the previous segment, I've taken Duelist Chain Reaction and Elixir of Power. Now, on the screen you would be seeing a few different versions of arranging your skills without those two skills before you are able to get them. So pay attention to skills such as the Unwavering Mastered, which gives you extra damage, 30% extra damage and 20% max energy. But this damage is only active when your energy is maxed out, so keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is Relentless Charge Superior would give you extra 20% damage whenever you use something like your Avenging Charge skill. So it's good you're using Avenging Charge, then your other skills are buffed for extra 20% damage. And also killing a bleeding enemy would generate energy, so it goes well together with Unwavering Mastered. Those are just some things that are worth mentioning. Of course, you may need to download some skills like Deep Gashes to the most basic version, or to download other things, but it's not such a bad setup. You also might want to use Blessed Talisman. If you don't need the crit chance, you can maybe use Master Blacksmiths for 10% damage or whatever else you want to put in this slot. And this is only until you get Duelist Chain Reaction and Elixir of Power. Keep in mind Duelist Chain Reaction could give you extra 200% from the 4 stacks, and this build uses 3 skills with cooldown, so it's extremely easy to get those 4 stacks and keep them up while fighting. Now this seems to be it for the skills. Next we will show you how I've decided to arrange the god skills. For the god skills you would see a few different variations, but this is something that you will want to use if you don't need HP or cooldown. You would see now in a moment my main god skills arrangement. So what you're seeing now is the god skills that were used when recording the footage in this video. I did need some extra cooldown reduction, so I did take those extra 4% cooldown reduction, and I didn't take this, which would remove another 5%. So as you can see, I'm getting those 9%. It's not much, but it did help me in the end, so it's not a bad choice of arranging the god skills. The other things you're seeing on your screen now are just some options of how you might want to arrange your build if you need more cooldown, or if you need more damage, or if you need more HP. So keep those options in mind and experiment, find whatever works best for you, and try to keep your cooldown reduction to somewhere around over 45%. If you can get it all the way to 50, then the build would be perfect. But try to also not sacrifice too much of the damage. But it's better to sacrifice damage than cooldown reduction. So if you can get it to 46, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 50% cooldown reduction, that's great. Then you can kind of rely on Mountain Pendant and Fiery Ring of Tori for that extra cooldown reduction proc. This is it for the god skills. Next I will show you a bit more gameplay and then a few boss fights. The way I play this build is kinda simple. There are a few combos that you could remember. One of the combos is using Wasp Bastion right after using Call to Oath. The other one would be using Call to Oath right after using your invulnerability, Ancestor's Gift. You can also keep trying to use the heroic Cleaver skill for extra damage and health regeneration. When you need to dodge out of combat for a few seconds or a second to regain, you can always use either Strike of the Anvil to leap away or Avenging Charge to charge away from the enemies. You can also keep using Avenging Charge while moving in between the fights, and since it's the only skill that uses energy, we would kind of most of the time be able to use it. We keep getting energy when using Wasp Bastion, and we can actually use skills without energy cost while we have our invulnerability from Ancestor's Gift up. On boss fights, Avenging Charge is a must-have skill in my opinion, but if you think you can deal without it, try to replace it with something else. I kind of always rush in, do my combo with Call to Ult regardless which one of the two combos. I prefer to start off with Call to Ult, Wasp Bastion, then a Strike of the Anvil, then quickly starting my vulnerability, then more Call to Ult, a bit more Strike of the Anvil, and in between I just kind of try to spam Cleaver when possible. At times I may not be the most effective while using the build and I might miss using Cleaver a few times now and then. Someone else with this build might get much better results, much faster boss kills and much better clearing rate on Chaos 5. I do not believe this build is able to do Chaos 7, and in order to do that either the build needs to get a buff along with 10 more other builds that need to get a buff, or Chaos 7 might need to get kind of nerfed a bit. For bosses, try to keep avoiding their attacks. Most of the times they do have some sort of animation for each of the skills that they use. This guy kind of tilts to one direction when he's going to do an animation skill that stuns on the other direction. Then there's the guy with the glowing thing on his back that kind of starts glowing rapidly right before using the massive AoE. So just pay attention, dodge when needed, and you should be more than fine with this build. Thank you for watching this video, folks. If you've liked it, you can let me know by hitting that button. If you want to be notified in the future for build videos that I'm uploading, you can subscribe to my channel. And if you need the links to my Twitch, Twitter, Facebook and Mixer pages, you can either check the description below the video or watch the final sequence of the video. You can also check my Warhammer CHAOSBANE builds playlist for some more build videos that I've made so far. Thank you again for watching the video and remember to keep it cool. Until next time, goodbye.